Well, there you guys go. I just wanted to start off giving you guys a little taste of what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about fiscal policy. That was Fed-assisted printing, which is a parody of the rap WAP. And it's worth watching. It's informative and funny. And so I encourage you guys to watch it. But first, we'll start you guys off here today. I had no audio on it. Oh, well, we'll figure it out some other time. I'm new to this game. Anyways, I thank you guys for joining us today. Of course, as always, please go by the coffee shop sometime. Get yourself a cup of coffee. It's really great. I'm told it's fantastic. Some of the best coffee around. As well, if you guys could please, I encourage you to share this out. This is also a podcast form called Fresh Brewed Kentucky Politics. So go ahead and you can hit the share button down there, and that will help me out. Or you share with a couple people. Share with one person, two people, no people, whatever you want to do. But please just hit that share button, and let's get into it today. We're going to cover a couple different topics here. One is, of course, the Tyler Murphy petition has been launched. It is live. For those who don't know, the Tyler Murphy petition is about Fayette County Public School Board member Tyler Murphy. He is sitting on both the Fayette County Public School Board and sitting on the National Teachers Union, NEA, which is the largest teachers union in the country, which I think is a conflict of interest, but Fayette County school boards are failing to take action on it, even ignoring state statutes of getting the AG's opinion on it. Instead, they're relying on a political hack lawyer that has worked for Democrats in the AG's office priorly, and they paid $30,000 to. So I'm sure he has no incentive to give them the ruling they want. That petition's live on Facebook, on the Twitters, everything else. So please check that out and share it out as well. We'll also be talking about Fayette County's raising property taxes. I know across the country, we're seeing a lot of raising of property taxes. We're going to talk about the hard sell of the vaccine, how they're selling it real hard to you guys. As well, we're going to talk about Joe Biden's address to Congress. I guess it's not a State of the Union per se because he's a month late, but it's his address to Congress, or I guess his State of the Union, whatever you want to call it. But I thank you guys so much for joining me today. Go ahead and hit that share button for me, and let's get this out there as I dig into property taxes. So, Fayette County is sending out notices. I know a lot of counties are saying, hey, we're raising your property values. We're raising the property taxes. Now, personally, I first find property tax to be pretty immoral. Okay, I find property tax to be pretty immoral simply because, simply stated, you own that property. You've paid probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity into it sometimes, and that is yours. And to say, hey, you have to pay us this percentage a year or you get evicted off that property is to say you don't own that property. Property taxes, I believe, are immoral because they're essentially saying even once you buy your home, you're just renting it from the government. You're just renting it from the government, and I disagree with that idea. I like I said, I find it immoral. I find it terrible that you could owe just a couple $1,000s in property taxes. You might be older, have lived in the home a long time, paid it off, and so you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity, but because you didn't pay a couple $1,000s of property taxes, you can be evicted out of your property. I find it hard to believe how these, we care about the people. And everything else, Democrats can sit there with a clear conscience evicting people out of their homes for not paying property taxes, but yet that's never come across their agenda, has it? Well, I promise you guys this, that's definitely something I know I'll be pushing for in the future, is to make sure people who don't pay their property taxes are not evicted out of their homes. I think that's immoral. But more importantly than that, Fayette County sent out and some letters, and I know a bunch of other counties also got them. I know states all across the country are getting them. That's saying that your taxes are going up because your property value is going up. This is weird to me, and I have a problem with it. And there's actually some case law on this I'll go into here in a second, but pretty much the value of a home should only be assessed when a sale happens. And then forever on out, that is the value of the home. Let me explain. The value of property goes up and it goes down. And it is determined by the market. And until you sell that home, how do you know how much it's really worth? You have no clue what the home is really worth until you sell it. Now they say, well, we looked at comps around the area and everything else. Doesn't matter. Because what if the home's tore apart? There's actually some court cases around this. I know I believe in Arizona, there's a gentleman who bought a home for like $250,000. It needed a lot of work. And the property value people came along and they assessed it to be worth like $450,000. He said, no. I'm taking that to court. And so he took it to court and he said, I should not be charged the property taxes for this entire place here. For that, I should be charged only the property taxes that I just bought the home for. And the argument, which did succeed in court, was that if it was worth $450,000, then that's what I should have bought it for. But if it's not worth $450,000, then why did I buy it? Why did I buy it for $250,000? That was the argument. And it came out to be true. It said, nope, you cannot charge a property tax above what you just sold it for. So extrapolating out that already set precedent, why can the government just come in and decide, nah, I think your home's worth more now? It's like, I've never sold it. I've never gotten it assessed. The market hasn't spoken yet on what the value of that is. But yet you can just go ahead and raise it. And I think it stems from this thought process that somehow the government knows all, or somehow the government knows best, or somehow the government's this super fair entity that definitely knows what to be doing. That's clearly not the case. I mean, take our market right now. One of the people who work with us, he's actually coming on full time thanks to the support of viewers like you. Go to donate.broodco.com. Donate.broodco.com. Go ahead and give us $10 a month, $20 a month, something like that. Help pay for him. We're also looking for a video editor, as that just went terrible at the beginning of this as I tried to share a video to start off with, but it didn't work well. Maybe I'll try that at the end. Anyways, so go ahead and go to donate.broodco.com. But he's a realtor. He also sells houses. And so if you need somebody to sell your house or buying a house, hey, let us know. We've got a good Liberty guy to do it. Anyways, and so he recently was working with a client that he sold a house to like a year ago that has turned around and sold their house now a year later for like $40,000 more than they bought it for. And that kind of flip in equity is crazy. And it's only occurring because, one, we're in this housing bubble where couple things going on. One, you don't have evictions and foreclosures really going on, so you don't have a foreclosure market that people are buying into. But as well, you also have really low rates coming from the Fed, and we're going to talk about the Fed here in a second. But I can promise you this, that I don't agree with the government just coming in, deciding your home's worth more and raising your I don't agree with property taxes to begin with. But like I said, to just come in and say, I'm raising it and you haven't sold it, that's an issue. The solution should be to not assess property taxes until the home is sold. Now, moving on. We're moving on to vaccines here. The hard sell of vaccines. I was reading an article last night. Go ahead. Also, as well, if you could, do me a favor. Go ahead and hit that share button. Share the link out. Share the podcast out. I'm encouraging you to do it because, I don't know. I just want you to do it. Please do it. Anyways, the hard sell of the vaccine. So we've got, now if you're vaccinated, you're getting donuts from Krispy Kreme every day. You can get dessert on a stick from White Castle. I know in New York on 420, they're doing joints for jabs. They were giving out weed, free weed to people who get vaccinated. As well as we had, here in Louisville, Kentucky, the Racers soccer game. We're giving out, I think, free entry if you got vaccinated. Amazon's going around. They're going to have vaccine sites on premises, try to get their people vaccinated. I'm sure that won't come with any pressure as an employer, right? We also have we got to look at this hospital system here in Kentucky that is offering this bonus system for people who get vaccinated. Basically, if your office group, your location is the first location to get to 80% of the people on site vaccinated, everybody gets a $600 bonus, a $600 bonus. If you're just get 80%, but you're not the first one, you get a $500 bonus, and it stair steps it down to 75% and 70%. Creating an obvious amount of peer pressure within the medical community to get vaccinated. Long story short, this is all coming across as a pretty hard sell. See, I worked in sales for a long time before I was a business owner, and there's something in sales. There's this thing we teach where, a couple things. One is a good deal is a state of mind. And the other thing is that what a person, when you sit down, you're selling a person something. So I'm selling you, let's say, a vaccine, and I'm selling you on taking it. And when you first say no, I go, oh, come on, here's $10 to take it. And you go, no. And I can say, okay, here's 20. No, okay, here's 50. No, here's 100. You start thinking that it's a bad deal no matter what. Because you started off just offering it to me, and now you've cut it. Well, in sales, you've cut the price down so low, or in this case, you've incentivized it so high that it actually makes people not want to buy it because they feel like they're being duped. The sale is too hard. You're selling it too hard. And coming from sales and seeing what they're doing and what's going on with the vaccine has made me uncomfortable watching it. Because I'm like, you are trying too hard. You're selling it too hard. Anytime I've seen a salesman selling something this hard, it's because it's either A, useless, or B, a scam, or something like, I don't know. Now, I have my own, theories on why they're pushing so much for people to get vaccinated. I think it's simply because the Democrats have connected their success in 2022 with being able to end the pandemic, and that is specifically tied to them ending the pandemic. And the easiest metric to say I ended the pandemic is to get 80-90% of people vaccinated and say, look at me, I saved the 80-90% of you from the vaccine, from the COVID. I saved the day. Vote for me and grow government. That's what I believe is going on, but they're selling it awfully hard. Kentucky's going to supposedly start offering some monetary incentives too as well. And the one thing I just had to say to people is, if you want to get it, get it. If you don't want to get it, don't get it. But don't get it because you feel like you're being pressured. Don't get it because they're offering you free donuts or dessert on a stick or weed or a monetary incentive. Get it because you want to get it. Don't feel pressured into doing it. And honestly, to research it all, look at all the data and everything else, and make your own decision on that subject. So kind of moving on from there, Joe Biden did his State of the Union / address to Congress is what they're calling it, because he's a month late. He had to work up the courage to go out there. I'm told that, and this is kind of odd too. I was kind of looking into the House rules. So for the State of the Union, they only allowed like half the amount of people normally in there to be in there. And of course, they're all wearing masks, and then they're also all vaccinated. So is the vaccine saving you or not saving you? Like, why are you all wearing masks if you're all vaccinated? But also, they're all socially distanced apart and everything else. Now, what I find weird is when I normally look at the House cameras, and I'm watching the House going on at the federal level, it seems like there's more than 50% of the people there. And it seems real odd, and not real odd, of course, it's just a show, that they would come out and say, nope, we need to push everybody apart. We need to separate everyone. We need to go ahead and go about this in this way. We need to cut down to 50% capacity. We need everybody in a mask. Even though they're vaccinated. And I'm told a lot of Republicans turned it down. So apparently half the seats went to the Republican Party, half the seats went to the Democrat Party. And I'm told most of the Republicans turned it down. And those who did go, maybe they should be judged for doing that. I don't know. But more importantly, going to the substance of Biden's State of the Union address, a lot of spending, a lot of jobs the government's creating too. A lot of jobs the government's creating, a lot of spending. And one thing, when I hear that, a lot of people think, oh, goody, we're going to get jobs. We're going to get it out there where everyone's going to enjoy it so much. Everybody's going to be working. It's going to be fantastic. My first question is, where are you getting these people to work these jobs? For those who are unaware, there's a giant problem right now going on because not working has been incentivized by the last COVID plan, which extended out the unemployment benefits to where people are not working jobs because they make more on unemployment than they would working, or at least not enough to get off unemployment. I can't blame them for that. I mean, your profit incentive is to not work. If somebody comes along and says, listen, I'll give you $100 less a week to not work than you're making working, I'm not working. I'm staying home too. What's the point of it? And so they've incentivized people to not work. So my first question as he talks about these jobs and everything else is, where are you finding all these people? Now, of course, the numbers say they're unemployed, but when you go to the amount of open jobs going on and you look around town, you see all the hiring signs, you know that that's just not the case. I mean, there are restaurants, there are industries that are literally turning down work because they don't have staff. They're closing some days because they don't have enough staff to stay open. They're not providing things like carryout. And this isn't just small companies. These are large companies like Waffle House and McDonald's and Burger King and all these large brands. They're having issues too getting people back to work. But apparently the government, though, in order to solve this problem, needs to create good jobs. Not just any kind of jobs, Joe Biden says, but union jobs. Because, of course, the unions are not one of the largest donors in politics, right? They're not one of the largest lobbyists, too, as well. Because, you know, it's not like organized crime, let's say, used unions to put a stranglehold monopoly through government regulation and force on industries. That never has happened, ever, right? So, you know, it's going to be union jobs, not because I'm incentivized to give unions the jobs and not because they give a lot of money to my campaigns, because that's just what I'm going to do. So Biden's going to create these jobs. Now, here's the problem, right? So if I create a job, and let's say for my job, for easy math, I'm going to pay somebody $100. So I'm going to pay you $100 to come work for me. So I'm paying you $100. And when I pay you $100, because I also have payroll tax, workers' comp, payroll fees, all those other things, it's going to cost me around $125 to pay you $100. You're going to net out $75, by the way, because the government's going to take their VIG, their 25 VIG. But for the government to pay somebody $100, or even to pay a company, see, here's the two options. Either government is the one paying people to do it, which becomes the problem because, you know, when government comes out, and you know, let's say they got to pay someone $100. Well, in order to pay somebody $100, they have to pay normally around about a 10 to 20%, so we'll say $10 on the low side, administrative fee to get that money out there. Then additionally, they had to pay another $10 or $20 to disperse out the funds as they were brought in from the Internal Revenue Service. So we'll put them at $10 there. And then the Internal Revenue Service is also going to pull in people as well and collecting up those taxes. So let's say that's a 10% administrative fee too. So now we're at $130. On top of that, there's $25 more, of course, because they still have the same rules they got to pay and tax government workers as well. Technically, they're supposed to match too as well. And so there adds in another $25. So what a private company can pay someone $100, it costs them $125. For the government to just pay somebody directly, it costs $155. However, on top of that, if they're going to pay it out to a company that then is going to turn around and pay it to an employee, so they're paving roads, so they're going to pay a road paver, and then that road paver is going to pay it to an employee. Don't forget to add on about another $10 to $20 in profit that road paver wants to make, because, of course, they're not doing it for free. So now we have, in order to spend $100 on something like paving a road, the government has to spend around $145, significantly more than a private company. So how do they do this, right? Because they can't possibly create jobs without having to cost them money. Because it's an investment. Remember, he kept saying that too. It's an investment. And, you know, the government, he was sitting there saying the government has been in position to make amazing investments into internet and the moon and all these places. First off, SpaceX is whipping NASA's butt. Okay, SpaceX is doing much more now. Understand that that's paid for by the government collecting up your taxes. And one would have to, I think there's a deeper discussion here of would there be a private incentive to go to the moon or to go into space? I think that's a discussion worth having. I also think it's a discussion worth having if you're somebody like me who believes in the Constitution. You could argue that space work, space travel might be a proper role of government. I can also argue against it, and I'd say it might be because, constitutionally speaking, our government's supposed to protect us, not protect us from viruses, but protect us from other countries, right? Secure our borders, which I know they do an amazing job at. But they're supposed to secure our borders, not be in wars overseas, but secure our borders. So you couldn't make an argument that in order for us to have a proper defense, we needed to be able to go to space. I'm not too keen on that argument, but whatever. I could see it. My point is, though, is SpaceX is whipping their butt. But he says, we made all these investments. Well, if you've made all these investments, where's the return on the investment? I mean, right now, the government's spending around about 30% of its budget to servicing debt. And part of the reason why they have to go into debt is because they literally can't create anything. They have to take money from this guy and give it to that guy and then take a VIG off in the process. But in order to pay for those VIGs, they're going to have to end up printing money. Now, a lot of people, I'm gonna kind of explain this real quick on how printing money works. This is very top level. This is very simple, easy. I know there's a lot more to it than this. I don't want to debate with you about it and how I missed this detail or that detail. This is just a basic idea to give somebody. So this is what happens, right? The government doesn't necessarily print money. First off, the Fed does. But the Treasury, what they typically do, they don't have to every time, which we're going to go into. But what they typically do is they produce a bond. And then that bond gets bought by somebody, which is basically somebody buying up the debt of America. That's why we're in debt to China. People talk about, oh, we're billions of dollars in debt to China. Well, that's because China's buying up these bonds. See, when you do business with America, you get paid in U.S. dollars. And unless you're going to convert those over to your currency, which is kind of difficult, you're basically left with having to spend in U.S. dollars. That's why the USD right now is kind of the global currency because we're one of the largest markets. So people come into the market, they produce goods and services, they get U.S. dollars in return, and then they end up going about their merry way. And what they do with those U.S. dollars to invest, one of the things they do is buy up U.S. bonds. That's how we're in debt to China. So they sell this bond, then they take it over to the Fed and say, look at me, I sold, what's for easy math, say, I sold a $100 million bond. Now you can print me $100 million. They do this in order to kind of help tap down on inflation. Now, they can also just print money, but they haven't been doing that for most of these things, but they can just print money. But of course, that is a disaster for inflation, of course, because you're just outright putting more money. I mean, you're still putting more money into the market, which devalues the dollar with the bond system, but at least you're tying it to something. You're saying people are finding it of value. You're getting a market indicator on everything to do with the dollar. But when they sell these bonds, the problem is that in order to, so if I borrow $100 million and I'm the government and I go to the Fed to print that $100 million, and I lend it to, and somebody buys up the bond. So now in order to pay off the debt, I got to end up paying $130 million. Well, if I'm the one printing the money, the Fed, and there's only $100 million I've printed, where am I going to get the other $30 million from? And so that's when people talk about the crashing. That's when they talk about kicking the can down the road. When the government borrows money, they're kicking that can down the road because they are going to have to print. At some point, they're just going to have to put money out into the market because they owe interest on money they've borrowed, and there's not enough money printed to pay it back. And so you end up with this situation of it's a tax increase because it lifts it causes inflation, which lowers the value of the dollar, which means your dollars aren't worth as much. So it's a tax increase, but also it kicks a can down the road of having our children and their children having to pay for it because then they've got to print money to pay for it, and that causes inflation. Or you got to sell bonds again. And of course, the less people want to buy U.S. bonds, when you'll hear people talking about the bond market, the less the higher the rates got to go, the lower the returns got to go, the more quickly that day is coming where it's going to spell for disaster. Now, a lot of the leftists argue that the government can never default on its debts because it can just print more money, which plays into this idea of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I've said this on prior podcasts. If I raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and I'm taking a percentage of your pay, I'm naturally increasing the pay. Now, I don't care if the dollar gets deflated if I'm just trying to pay off my debt. So for an example, if I owe $100 million, but I'm going to increase my what I'm bringing in because I just increased minimum wage, which I have an incentive as a government to do to pay down debt. I'm now going to turn around and pay down that debt, but the dollar's worth less. But that doesn't change the terms of the loan. The amount I borrowed and the interest rates are all still the same. Long story short, I don't like what Biden was saying, okay? I don't like him talking about government making investments. I don't like government creating jobs because government doesn't create jobs. That's not the role of government. I don't like his talk about the government is we the people. I don't like that. That just isn't true. It isn't correct. It isn't right. I have a lot of issues with that. The government isn't we the people. The government is an organization that we the people have contracted with through the Constitution. We are not the government. The government is not us. That is the collectivism thought processes. And we see that a lot online now. We're seeing a lot of people being like, hey, it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good. Well, I encourage you to read some books about what happens when people are doing things just for the greater good. I encourage you to read that and check that out. Well, I thank you guys for joining me. Please give this a share, give it a listen. Come by the coffee shop sometime. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.